They say pride comes before the fall, but in Marcus Thorne's case, pride came with a $10,000 price tag and ended in a $2.5 million graveyard of his own making. I spent 6 years building the digital nervous system of Apex Logistics, a system so complex, it was practically sentient. I was the guy who stayed up until 4 a.m. while Marcus was busy ordering bottle service at high-end clubs. I was the one who kept the heart of the company beating. So, when Marcus called me into his office to fire me just to dodge a contractually obligated bonus, he thought he was trimming the fat. He didn't realize he was cutting the brake lines on a high-speed train while standing right on the tracks. He thought I was an overhead expense. I'm about to show you why I was the only thing standing between him and total, irreversible ruin. This isn't just a story about a bad boss. It's a 4,000-word autopsy of a dying empire. Grab a drink, settle in, and watch how a $10,000 mistake turned into a $2.5 million nightmare. To understand why Marcus Thorne was such a catastrophic failure, you have to understand what Apex Logistics was before I arrived. It was a chaotic mess of paper ledgers and crashing Excel spreadsheets. When I was hired as the lead systems architect, I didn't just write code. I built a proprietary ecosystem called the Sentinel. This wasn't just a database. It was an integrated logistics engine that managed everything from fuel consumption and driver sleep schedules to real-time medical temperature monitoring for high-value pharmaceutical shipments. For 6 years, I lived and breathed the Sentinel. I knew every line of the 3 million lines of code. I knew the specific way the servers breathed when the load got too high. During the Monday morning rush, Marcus, on the other hand, was the classic legacy hire. His father had started the company, and when the old man retired, Marcus stepped in with a degree in marketing and a desire to turn the company into his personal piggy bank. He didn't understand that technology isn't a static object. It's a living thing that requires constant maintenance. Every year, my contract included a $10,000 architecture integrity bonus. It was a drop in the bucket for a company clearing $50 million in annual revenue. But to me, it was the principle. It was the recognition of the 80-hour work weeks and the missed family dinners. As the year-end approached, Marcus started acting strange. He began hiring consultants, kids fresh out of college who knew how to use Slack, but couldn't explain what ASQL injection was. I saw the writing on the wall, but I didn't think he'd be stupid enough to actually pull the trigger. On a rainy Tuesday, the invite appeared on my calendar, quarterly review, office of the CEO. I walked in, and there sat Marcus, looking at a spreadsheet. He didn't even ask me to sit. He told me the company was optimizing its human capital. He said the Sentinel was now self-sustaining and that my $120,000 salary plus the $10,000 bonus was an inefficiency. He fired me right then and there. He offered me a 2-week severance if I signed a non-compete and handed over my master keys. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man who had never worked a hard day in his life. I signed the papers, handed over a secondary set of keys that I knew wouldn't work for the core kernel, and walked out. I didn't tell him about the Friday handshake. I didn't tell him that without my manual verification of the security certificates, the entire system would think it was under a cyber attack and lock itself down to protect the client data. He wanted to save $10,000? Fine. Let's see how much it costs to hire a team to fix a system that was designed to be unhackable. The first 48 hours after being fired were strangely peaceful. I went home, slept for 12 hours for the first time in a decade, and then went to the park. But I kept my laptop nearby. I wasn't going to hack them. I didn't have to. I just had to watch. Friday night arrived, the night of the handshake, in the architecture of the Sentinel. I had built a security layer called the dead man switch. It was a standard high-level security protocol for companies dealing with sensitive medical data. Every Friday at midnight, the lead architect, me, had to input a 64-digit rotating key to prove the system hadn't been compromised by an external force. If the key wasn't entered, the system would assume the lead architect was incapacitated or the server room had been seized. At 12:01 a.m., my private monitor, which I had synced to the public-facing status of Apex's servers, turned from a steady green to a flashing amber. It had begun. The system had automatically encrypted the client manifests folder. This folder contained the delivery addresses for 3,000 trucks currently on the road. Without those manifests, the drivers didn't know where to go, and the warehouse workers didn't know what to load. By 1:30 a.m., the amber turned to a deep blood red. The system had now initiated global lockdown. Every tablet in every Apex truck across the country went blank. At 2:15 a.m., my phone rang. It was Sarah, the junior dev Marcus had hired to replace me. She was crying. She told me the servers were gone and that everything was showing a 256-bit encryption screen. I told her, as calmly as I could, that I was no longer an employee and that she should probably talk to Marcus. She told me Marcus was already at the office, screaming at the monitors and throwing chairs. I hung up. 10 minutes later, Marcus called. He didn't say hello. He yelled, "What did you do to my servers?" I told him I did exactly what he asked. I left. I reminded him that I had warned him about the maintenance protocols, but he had called them inefficiencies. He threatened to have me arrested for sabotage. I told him to call the police, because the logs would show that the system locked itself down due to lack of input, not because of a hack. I told him he had exactly 6 hours before the temperature-controlled shipments $1.50 million worth of insulin and specialty vaccines began to spoil because the cooling systems were also tied to the central server. The silence on the other end of the line was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. Saturday morning was a bloodbath for Apex Logistics. The news had picked up the story. Regional medical supply chain gridlocked. Hospitals were calling, demanding to know where their shipments were. Marcus's board of directors, men who usually only showed up for golf and steak dinners, were now in the office, demanding answers. Marcus called me again at 8 a.m. This time, his voice was shaking. He offered me the $10,000 bonus and my job back. I laughed. I told him that $10,000 was the price for Alex of last Tuesday. The Alex of this Saturday was a high-stakes emergency consultant. My new fee was $250, $0 for the restoration, plus a 5-year contract as an external advisor at double my previous salary, paid upfront into an escrow account. He called me a thief. I told him he was the one who tried to steal my bonus, and now the market was simply adjusting for the risk. While he was arguing, the non-performance clauses in his contracts were kicking in. Apex had guaranteed delivery agreements with the state. For every hour the medical supplies were late, they owed $100,000 in penalties. By noon, he was down for $100,000 in penalties alone. By 2 p.m., the spoilage clock hit zero. $1.5 million worth of pharmaceutical products were now legally considered waste because the temperature logs had been offline for too long. The total loss was now climbing toward $1 million. Marcus was finished, but he was too proud to admit it. He hired a cybersecurity firm to try and break my encryption. I knew that firm they were good, but it would take them 3 weeks to crack a 256-bit rotating key. Marcus didn't have 3 weeks. He had 3 hours before the board of directors officially declared the company insolvent. I sat on my balcony, drinking an expensive coffee, watching the stock price of Apex Logistics tumble in real time. It was a masterclass in how a small act of greed can snowball into a mountain of debt. Marcus's pride was costing him about $2.00 every minute he stayed on the phone with me trying to negotiate. By Saturday evening, the board had seen enough. They realized that Marcus had hidden the true nature of the IT restructuring from them. They held an emergency vote over Zoom and removed Marcus as CEO with immediate effect. The chairman of the board, a man named Arthur who actually respected the tech side of the business, called me personally. He didn't scream, and he didn't threaten. He asked me what it would take to save the company. I gave him the same terms I gave Marcus, but I added one thing. I wanted Marcus's office, and I wanted his $300,000 company car sold, and the proceeds donated to the local children's hospital. Arthur agreed within 10 seconds. I drove to the office, walking past the security guards who just a few days ago had escorted me out. I walked into the server room, which felt like a sauna, because the junior devs had turned off the AC trying to reset the hardware. I sat down, opened a terminal, and entered the master override. Within minutes, the amber lights turned green, the encryption dissolved, the manifest populated, and the warehouse sirens began to wail as the crews rushed to get the trucks moving again. Marcus was standing in the hallway, looking like a ghost. He tried to speak to me, but I didn't even look at him. I just told security, "There's an unauthorized person in the building. Please remove him." The irony was delicious. Marcus was escorted out in front of the entire staff the same way he had done to me. The final tally of his optimization was staggering. $1.5 million in spoiled product, $800, $0 in state penalties, and $200,000 in lost client contracts. A total of $2.5 million, all because he didn't want to pay a $10,000 bonus. I spent the next year rebuilding Apex, but this time, I made sure the contracts for every engineer were ironclad. We became more profitable than ever, and I eventually bought out the remaining shares to become a majority owner. As for Marcus, last I heard, he was working as a consultant for a failing MLM, still telling anyone who would listen that he was the one who built Apex. But the code doesn't lie, and neither does the bank account. I learned a valuable lesson that year. If you're going to be the heart of a company, make sure you're also the one holding the scalpel.